Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has welcomed the upgradation of Pakistan's economic rating by international credit rating agency Fitch from CCC plus to B minus, saying, let me quote, Fitch has declared Pakistan's economy as stable. The improvement of economic rating by international institutions reflects economic progress and the global community's confidence in the country's economy, unquote. Likewise, Finance Minister Mohammad Aurangzeb has also welcomed this upgradation, saying this upgradation was a strong expression of confidence in the country's economic reforms and policies, unquote. Fitch says the upgrade reflects confidence that the country would implement structured reforms, supporting its IMF program performance and funding ability, unquote. It also talks about the external pressures, which we will also be discussing with our panelists during the course of our conversation today. In another major development, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has thanked the Pakistani expatriates for sending a record $4.1 billion during the March this year in remittances. Governor State Bank of Pakistan, Mr. Jameel Ahmed, has said this is the first time that the remittances have crossed $4 billion threshold in a single month. Also, while addressing the first three-day Overseas Pakistanis Convention 2025 in Islamabad, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif praised the great contributions of the expatriate Pakistanis, announcing the establishment of special courts for overseas Pakistanis to address the legal concerns more efficiently. There are a number of other measures which have been announced during this important address by Prime Minister to this particular convention for the overseas Pakistanis. We'll also be taking those important points of a discussion. For that, we are honored to be joined in the studio by Mr. Faheem Sardar. He is economics and policy specialist. Mr. Sardar, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. On Skype at the same time, we are honored to be joined by Dr. Hassan Daud, investment expert. Dr. Bhatt, thank you very much for your time also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Later on in the show, we'll be joined another participant. As they join in, I'll be introducing them. Mr. Sardar, let's begin with this particular improvement or the upgradation of Pakistan's economic rating by credit rating agency Fitch from CCC plus to B minus. What does that basically signify? There are important statements that have come from both the Prime Minister and Finance Minister. We'll be talking about that also. But this mere upgradation, what does broadly this one signifies?
Thank you for having me. Broadly speaking, this signifies that there's been an improvement in Pakistan's credit rating, and which is now being internationally recognized. What is more important is that from a non-investment grade rating, we've come into an investment grade rating. Now, this is the lowest thing, and we can move up from here. However, it's been a struggle. It's been a long journey for Pakistan because of the economic stabilization that needed to be done. But what's important right now is once you have B minus, you can now work on this. It opens up avenues for you. It opens up financing avenues. It reduces risk. It reduces costs, financing costs. And at the same time, it allows a country to basically market itself, because this is an upward trajectory. What's very important for us, I think, going forward is to keep this trajectory, to make sure that we now go to B positive, B plus, and then, to double B and so on and so forth. But we have to make sure that we don't lose the momentum that's been built up, and we have to ensure that we do not allow negativity to creep into the economy, which it happens every 5 to 6 years. This time, as we can see, the Finance Minister and the clearly talking about the upgradation, that how it's going to be helpful. But I do sense, from what I saw heard from their comments, from the Finance Ministers and the Prime Ministers, of course, that there is, I think there's a bit of care this time, that we have to be careful that we do not allow negativities to come in, because once those negativities come in, they sort of start to take the rating down. And once that happens, then you have a cascading effect.
So this has happened after 3 years, this particular improvement. Am I correct on that?
Almost, yeah.
Okay, so what were the challenges on that particular front, as you already mentioned in your take?
When you have a rating which is considered non-investment grade, so that brings in a different category of investor, and it just brings in a different category of risk return profile. When you get into the investment grade rating, that is something that is now we're talking business. We're talking serious business. Pakistan can basically market its securities, the future securities that we're going to bring in a better way. Because once you get good credit rating, you basically are, you've been proven to be able to fund your liabilities in a much better way. At the bottom line is we also have to see what Moody's is going to say. There's the Chinese Degong. I want to see what Degong is going to say. So I'm looking at that as well. But this is a very important event in our current economic momentum. We need to make sure, I'm repeating myself,
that this continues and
this has to
the
continue.
negativity doesn't leap in. So what do you understand of this, if you could explain it a little in detail regarding when this particular statement says that this particular rating is based on citing the increased confidence in the country's progress as well as narrowing its budget deficits?
Okay. The backdrop to this statement is the IMF program. The IMF program, let's take the politics aside. The IMF always says increase your revenue, reduce your expenses, or maintain your expenses and keep increasing your revenue. The biggest source of revenue for a government is tax. So as we know that Pakistan's taxation volume that has been collected has actually gone up quite a bit. That has been very helpful, but at the same time we've had some rises in costs as well. Interest costs and principal costs, to be more specific. But at the same time, this the positivity that's developed because of I would say the forced saving, the forced optimization of our taxation structure, that has basically created more financial how do you call it, financial room for Pakistan to play in. That has now translated into a better liquidity situation, which has translated into a better credit rating. When we look at credit rating is not just about how many assets you have in a country. It's about your ability to pay your liability. So Pakistan's ability to pay its liability has improved. And if you notice the statement that you just read out, that is exactly what they're talking about. We are in a better situation, we are better placed to pay our liabilities. And by the way, we've never defaulted.
Right. Dr. Butt, how are you looking at this particular upgradation of the rating by Fitch? Let me also quote that Pakistan performed well on quantitative performance criteria, particularly on the reserve accumulation and the primary surplus.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think for me, the biggest reflection is on the whole of government approach. The way this government in the past few months have actually accumulated the entire strength and work on towards the betterment of not just the economy, but also the confidence of the institutions like Fitch and of course Moody's, and also confidence of overseas Pakistanis. So what we have seen living in Islamabad, what I'm seeing in the past 2 weeks is perhaps positivity, starting from the Mineral Summit and now the Overseas Summit. And again, this rating coming at a time when large number of overseas Pakistanis are here. So I think while it builds the confidence of, as was reflected earlier, of the investors, it also builds the confidence of our diaspora to come and invest back in their homeland and also look at the opportunities that are available. And I think through SIFC, the whole of government approach, the positivity that is coming in the financial sector, I think that is a great reflection on Pakistan. And I think for me, the biggest fear always remains in a boom-bust cycle that we always remain, and the challenge of it. I think the continuity of policy will still be a challenge, and I think I will be carefully looking at how the government ensures that, because in the past that has been our challenge. We have gone up and then immediately after the change of government, we have immediately declined. So hopefully this time, since we have the SIFC to ensure continuity of policy, this positive element and this trend will continue. And I think what is more important for me, and I again would have a reflection of the Mineral Summit here, that we are now diversifying in our ways of exporting not just the raw material, but value-added products. So now if we diversify, ensure better tax collection and look at the regulatory more carefully, reducing regulations, ensuring that investors get the enabling environment, I think the government gets the credit for this.
Right. So, Finance Minister has talked about that this particular upgradation in the rating by Fitch is a strong expression of the confidence in the country's economic reforms and policies. Also, saying that more investment, trade, increased employment opportunities, industrial development, and additional resources will be available to the country. Could you kindly expand on this particular statement by the Finance Minister?
I think for Pakistan, and one of the mayors that I missed on was the reduction of the electricity prices. Now that our the electricity prices have gone down, and the export led industry would perhaps flourish from here, and we can build up on these special economic zones. When the investors come and they build and they invest in their country, and also the foreign direct investment when it comes, that perhaps adds a lot. When we saw CPEC coming in 2013, the confidence immediately went up. Not just the confidence of the investor, but I think the overall national confidence went up. And in this case also, I see there would be, and now that our reserves are getting better, now that our tax collection is getting better, we will have enough money to perhaps pump into the PSGP. And in the PSGP, we should look at important sector that are more productive, and then of course give incentives in those sectors. And when the government is able to give incentives, reduce utility prices, I think the overall industrialization that we've been promised for many years would get better. And I think the role of the chambers and of course the other organizations that are actually working on improving the industrial canvas of our country, I think that would grow.
Right, Doctor, but before I take this particular point to Mr. Sardar as well, this particular statement by Fitch talks about the provincial governments also going into legislation that legislated increase in agricultural income tax, which it also terms as a key structural benchmark. How do you look at that particular step on the part of the provincial governments, with what sort of an impact in the longer run?
Mentioned about regulatory guillotine. I think when we talk of the role of Board of Investment, it's not just the Federal Board of Investment, also the provincial government and their respective Board of Investment. And when there is synergy through SIFC, I think we can have areas where we can venture where we have not done in the past. And agriculture and taxing the agriculture sector is one area where there were challenges of implementation. And I think this time when the government is serious and is implementing taxing in not just in these areas, but other areas which have the potential to grow our revenue, I think the confidence will get better. When you keep taxing the salary class, the pressure, which are the engines of growth, the middle class, I think the pressure on them grows. And now that you diversify, look at other sectors which can be taxed and perhaps the revenue could be increased, the overall productivity of the nation gets better. And I think this is what was missing, and I think this will have a great impact in going forward.
Right, I get your point. Well, Mr. Faheem Sardar will be talking to you regarding this particular very step that is being taken by the provincial governments, that legislation, and also the diversification when we talk about the tax collection regime. But at the moment, I'll have to go for a quick short break. After this particular short break, we'll be resuming the discussion from here. For that, stay tuned. Welcome back to Views on News. In today's program, we are talking about that upgradation by Fitch, the international credit rating agency, of Pakistan's economic rating from triple C plus to B minus. And also another development of that first three-day Overseas Pakistanis 2025 convention that is underway in Islamabad, to which Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif made an important address and also lauded the great contributions made by overseas Pakistanis. Before heading to the break, we were in discussion with Mr. Faheem Sardar and Dr. Hassan Daud. But so Mr. Sardar, this particular statement by Fitch talks about the provincial governments taking legislation for increase in the agriculture income tax.
Yes,
so this, how do you look at this particular step and how far-reaching an impact it is going to have as far as our total tax collection is concerned? And also we often get to hear about the diversification of the tax regime, expansion of it.
Okay, once again, let's step back to where we sort of went before. Whenever, for example, whenever a country has more financial capacity, liquidity, financial room, that is where you're able to do more projects and you're able to do more things and you're able to give, even handouts to the public. But here in Pakistan, when we talk about financial room, the ability to generate more tax revenue, agriculture was one place that was totally blank. Now tax has been raised.
Why was it blank? What were the core
Because I think it's of a
challenges?
power structure in Pakistan. Because you see land holding in Pakistan, if you just look at the land holding, you can see many things. But this is a normal pattern for every country. This is nothing new, by the way. So if you look at the historical precedents in other countries, you will see a similar thing happening.
Is it also because of the, difficulty in actually calculating the real income tax in this particular field?
Yes, that is part of it, but it's nothing that cannot be handled.
Okay.
But what we have to accept is that we've ventured into an area that Pakistan never ventured into earlier. So once Pakistan has increased the tax in agriculture, there's a high probability that there will be revenue, but at the same time tax has to be healthy. Tax cannot be imposed in a way or cannot be done in a way which causes the country to suffer. Now we have an overburdening of tax on the salaried class, and there were the comparisons that salaried people are paying more tax than the
that particular contribution of the burden the salaried class also feels, that has been recently acknowledged by Prime Minister himself also.
Absolutely, absolutely, and they're trying to fix it. And if you see that when agriculture is now being tapped, that basically means that Pakistan is trying to create a new revenue stream. So the more revenue streams you have, the more financial room you will have, the more liquidity you will eventually have, then the more projects that you can fund. It's very simple actually, and you have to keep it simple.
So when it comes to specifically this agriculture sector,
Yeah.
this particular step, the legislation on the part of the provincial governments, what sort of contribution is that going to make to what impact in the longer run?
If I understand your question correctly, basically agriculture comes from the provinces in different capacities and different forms. For example, Sindh and Punjab have their own agriculture profile. KP has its own agriculture profile. But it has to be harmonized in a certain way where the laws that are going to be enacted for agricultural tax, as you mentioned, they have to be done in a way that this is not a isolated event, or it does not affect one aspect and it leaves out the other, or if it leaves out lots and that leaves out a loophole. So this is because I mean this is the uncharted territory for Pakistan. Let's be very frank here. So, but it's a new revenue stream. The government is relying heavily on this, and you can see the focus on farming, mechanization, and improvement of yields. That's what the government has been talking about. Even the Prime Minister has been talking about. He has mentioned cotton output so many times. That used to be close to 12 to 14 million bales. We've come down to around about 6-7 million bales. So there's a lot that needs to be done. But once you have greater production, you can have greater tax.
Expansion of the tax base other than agriculture, what are those other core areas that you could identify?
Sure. You have small traders. They are doing business, and the government has not once, but I think 3 to 4 times tried to bring in a single tax regime or single payment regime for small traders, and there was a lot of protest against such a regime. But the less human interface there is in a taxation system, the easier it becomes. And it has to be a very simple structure. If, for example, we talk about a single tax point for the whole of the country, that's easier said than done. But if it is brought in after all the hard effort, it's going to be very beneficial for Pakistan.
Is it only, has it to do only with the simplification of this particular structure? Or do you think it's going to serve as a guarantee that all the people are going to come voluntarily and, register themselves as a taxpayer? Or is it, do we require something more than that to trigger that very shift in the mindset?
It's a chicken and egg thing, to be honest. If the system is simple, you can market it to the people, and you can tell the people, look, we've simplified the system, please come on board. And gradually things are improving. However, the mindset in Pakistan has of the average Pakistani has been like it is in many other countries, it's basically tax averse. Salaried people have to pay tax because for the simple reason that they have to pay tax. There is no way to get out of it. But shifting a mindset, I think, is more important and is going to be more difficult than creating a single tax structure.
So what's required for that? Where to start
Persistence. Persistence. You have to have a clear outreach narrative, and you have to persistently, repeat it, echo it, but it has to be backed by infrastructure. If as and when the government says that there's going to be a simplification of the tax structure, excuse me, it has to be visible for people to see. For a small trader, for an SME, for a startup, for a big company. I mean, just look at the amount of tax big companies have to pay. We've entered into the arena of, we're talking about industrialized countries' tax rates in Pakistan. So that's something that we need to sort of slowly step back from and build new systems and then tell people, follow the system.
Right, Doctor, but let's talk about this particular important development when we talk about record remittances. $4.1 billion just in a single month of March 2025 is such a great increase, and Prime Minister is of course lauded overseas Pakistanis in this particular regard. To what factors do you think this record remittance was witnessed during this particular month of March 2025?
Yeah, thank you, Jawad. I just want to highlight a fact based on your earlier discussion. I think in terms of taxation, the government has to apply just check. I mean, for it cannot be bottom up sort of reflection. It has to be top down. So if the elite are paying taxes and the sector which are represented by elite, if they're fair taxation across board, I think that is where the government can ensure everyone is willing to pay, because paying tax does not come natural. So for doing that, if it's across board and if every element and segment of the society is paying taxes and the government is applying them justly, I think we are getting into a regime where people will be willing to pay taxes like the salaried class already does. And I think again here the digitization of the system is being done. I think FBR is taking prudent measures, talking to the stakeholders, and that discussion, because now that we are entering into the budgetary phase and a lot of stakeholder engagement would happen, I think the government is doing the right step at the right time. And coming back to your point regarding the remittance, I think one of the factor was, of course, Ramadan. We just had Ramadan, and traditionally people send home money for celebration of Eid and of course during Ramadan. But I think this also reflects the growing confidence of the overseas Pakistani and the government and the measures that the government is taking. People are taking the right ways of sending money back home. I think the Hawala Hundi is being rejected, and now the fair means and the digital means of sending remittance back home is being done. And that is actually one of the great measures that the government has taken. I think the credit also goes to the commercial councillors which have engaged with overseas Pakistanis, because this is their hard-earned money. And when they send back home, they expect that it would reach to their destination. And I think the government would utilize them well. So I think we should give them the credit. And I think the due credit has been given in the last 2 days when the Prime Minister and the Army Chief has actually spoken to them, giving them confidence to engage with Pakistan. And I think this will go a long way, at least this year. And then following years, we can take measures, not just through expansion of tax, but also bringing in more investment through these overseas Pakistanis and also foreign direct investment. So I think a lot of measures are actually building confidence, not just of Fish and other institutions. IMF is giving good heads up to some of the measures that have been taken, including venturing into the agriculture sector. But I think nationally, we see sentiments are getting better, but still there's a long way to go in terms of not just building confidence overseas Pakistani. I think finding ways where there are loopholes in addressing that. Please remember, I feel working in Board of Investment earlier, I feel that we are an over-regulated country. And in terms of bringing in industrialization in our country, I think A, we have to build special economic zone. B, we have to reduce the number of regulations so that, the investors can come invest in our country, and I think we can diversify. Please remember, we are living in very challenging time. We're seeing trade war happening, tariff war happening between US and China, and this.
I seek your partner for the interjection over here, joining us on Skype, Dr. Hassan Daud. But thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight. And Mr. Faheem Sardar, Economics and Policy Specialist, joining us in the studio. Mr. Sardar, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. That brings us to the end of today's episode. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.